Sego soy quick. It's gonna go. I'd like to read for you. An excerpt from a book called The Daughters of Copper Women. It was written down and recorded by a woman named Anne Cameron. And it was published, Press Gang Publishers, 1981, but that's besides the point. It's a traditional and indigenous story of the Western peoples, the Western doorway. So I thought it significant to speak to women's issues by using the language of the women themselves from that country, that land. And then I have a poem, and you'll notice a similar theme. But the funny thing about this book here is it was written in 1981, and I was born in 1983, so it was written before my time. And I didn't actually physically touch this book and actually know that this was a book until 2016, about a year ago. So the poem that I wrote was in 2015. In other words, what I'm saying is I didn't have knowledge of this book. So I'll read you what the book says, what the Western women say. I'm of the Gunyagahaga. We are the Eastern doorway. And when I read you my poem, you'll hear what an Eastern man thinks. So here it goes. Many generations after old woman freed herself from her meat and bag of skin, many years after the secrets began to be taught by and to the chosen women, the first period of testing occurred, a period old women had known to occur. The women for centuries had not concerned themselves with politics or argument. They left these things to the men, to give them something to occupy themselves with during the long dark months of winter. The women concerned themselves with spiritual things, and with studying the teachings of society, and with children, and keeping the society strong, and with making sure life was lived as it ought to be, fully and with contentment. The women became complacent. That means you pat yourself on the back. They thought because things had always been so, they would always remain so, and they did not notice the men had begun to dominate many areas of society, had become powerful, had begun to believe their power was the way things were supposed to be. Some of the women even thought the men were right, and that their ideas were as things were supposed to be. And slowly the men took control of all life until the women were left with freedom only within the society of women itself. The men began to give orders to the women to say which man their daughters would marry. The men began to insist that inheritance should not come through the women at all. And then, when things were not at all as they ought to be, a thing happened that is still spoken of among the women of this society. Temeyoski went into the waiting house to pass her sacred time in a sacred place, sitting on moss and giving her blood, her inner blood, to the Mother Earth. Men were not allowed near the waiting house. It was too sacred for them to understand or approach. And ad-lib in there. In my culture, I was told that a man would not cross a woman's path and would walk a kilometer out of the way to avoid her when she was on her moon time, because she was so powerful. So then, Temeyoski stayed in the waiting house with some of the other women whose time it was, and she was there for more than 4 days. When she came from the waiting house, she was a woman hit by lightning, a woman struck by wonder, a woman shaken with power, a woman filled with love. She walked from the waiting house with a look on her face more potent than magic. Seeds of life glittered in her hair. She smiled and sang a song that told of love that knew nothing and expected nothing but fulfilled everything. She sang of knowing and trusting, of sharing and giving. She sang of a place so wondrous the minds of people could not even begin to imagine it. Actually, I did imagine it. A place without anger or fear, a place without loneliness or incompletion. She walked through the village singing her song, and the women followed her. They collected their children, boys and girls alike, and followed Temeyoski, leaving behind the cooking pots and weaving looms, leaving behind the husbands and fathers. Temeyoski walked past the village along the beach toward the forest, singing her song of love and wonder, and the women followed. The men found the village empty, the meals uncooked, the work unfinished. They followed the women, angry and threatening. They followed the women in the forest, followed the women who followed Temeyoski, who followed the song she learned in the waiting house when she found love. Stormwind tried to stop the men with gales and rain. The forest tried to stop them. Even the sky tried to stop them with thunder and lightning, and the sea smashed herself against the rocks to warn the women. The women wept, and they did not want to return home. The men threatened to kill Temeyoski, to silence her song so that she would never again tempt the women from their hearth fires. They went after Temeyoski to kill her. But Kuolas, who was a female figure and was the father of the 4 sons who fathered all ordinary people. That's the 4 sacred beings, by the way, of the 4 directions of the 4 men, of the 4 corners of the creation or universe. She flew above the heads of the shouting men and the weeping women and sang of things people had forgotten. The storm stopped, the wind calmed, the rain stopped falling, and the sea became still. All creation listened to the song of Temeyoski, and then she flew away. The men stopped arguing and began to talk. Sorry, got a tickle in my throat. I didn't quite say that right. The men stopped arguing and began to talk. The women said why they had wanted to leave. The men listened. The women listened. They went home together to try and live properly again. But sometimes a woman will think she hears a song or thinks she remembers beautiful words, and she will weep a little for the beauty that she almost knew. Sometimes she will dream of a place that is not like this one. Sometimes she almost thinks she knew what it was Temeyoski was singing in her song, and she weeps for beauty she never knew. So basically, that's the idea of Temeyoski in the Western nations. The Western doorway, which is the women's doorway, the keepers of life and death. So now we get to what I wrote December of 2015. And remember, I hadn't had that book until 2016, about a month or 2 later. Okay, it's called Our Peace, Her Power, Our World. Woman, beauty has 4 billion faces, yet truly she has one name, Agungwehungwe. Forgive a man like me for thinking you all the same, but I do know that being the same is as diverse as the trees in the forest or the fish in the sea. And for what I am, baby, ain't no tree or fish got nothing on a real flesh and blood woman. Unmistakably, when her feet remain sacred, I will not cross even her lightest footprint. Her fight for freedom is why I speak true to my children. I have 2 daughters. All regardless of family, consistency, or size. Yearn, desire, want, and need for the same. Therein lies the rub, my dear. What are the parameters for different cultural perspectives in different corners of the world? Especially when there are so many unfair stipulations and outright lies told to women that unfortunately many still believe and enforce amongst themselves. A woman's right to self-determination is paramount. But does that mean she becomes an enemy to all? Or just to men? Or not at all? A woman's right to bring beauty back to this place. Yet let me let me make one more stipulation. A woman not of dignity earns not the respect of real men. And a woman of dignity, not respected by men, is obviously not around real men. So, my lovelies, trudge on, plotting a course into once charted territory of the ancient Gunungwe before you. My woman, when all their hearts and minds and spirits are lifted from oppression, suppression, aggression, and digression, our children shall once again be free. Freedom to a man like me comes at the highest cost. And no, that is not death. It costs heart, body, mind, soul, spirit, and intent of choice, coalescing and coagulating with the Great Spirit, with one. Losing myself full of wants and gaining a world full of needs. O sacred female, special woman, how I need to help you. You may save yourself, yes. Yet, you absolutely need a man's help along the way. Forget militant and angry feminism. In truth, it is a doggerel, a feminine despot, incapable of sympathy. Empathy without substance is an unfertilized ovum. No garden shall grow, and dead blood falls to the floor. Partnered with masculinity, her divine femininehood lives on in the dreams of her sons and daughters, our children. Broken mentality is a thing of the past, as I have seen no broken women, yet for their mistakes I've only seen the remnants of the death of this nightmare called It's a Man's World. The final death blow is coming. It is dark and hell is hot, but all is not lost. Do not give up, my women. Not on my watch. Not now. Not ever. Especially when we are on the cusp, the verge, the precipice. Lose all fear. Spread your wings and fly. Call upon beauteous nature, Mother Earth's power. Yet create. Don't destroy. With tsunami, earthquake, volcano, tornado, hurricane, lightning, and flood, drought, famine, pestilence, realize the power of the divine woman's spirit. It only took one woman to call me out. And my question is this. If 4 billion women shake the ground, what kind of men could we call down from Skyworld? Food for thought, my love. Create your peace. Leave war to the lesser beings. Love, power, woman. My woman, my woman, my wife. Now that was dedicated to my partner and fiancé. And basically, if the women wanted, you could elect anybody you wanted in politics. You could oust all of the men in politics if you wanted. The problem where it breaks down, I have many women friends, female friends, and you know what they all say, including my mother? They have a hard time being friends with women because women get too bitchy, gossipy, and stab each other in the back. And I'm sorry to say that, but I've heard this time and time again from basically any female I come into contact with. That's a condition of the oppressor. That's what this oppressive male circumstance has done to the minds of women. To make you think you have to compete somehow to get a man's respect. And it's like, no. There is no competition with a man. You don't have to compete with what a man says. Go and say what you say, but say it even 10 times better, 100 times better. To dwell is not where we're at. We're not crabs in a bucket. What if all of the women in the country walked out, just like Temeyoski said, just like I just said? 4 billion women, shake the ground. I picked up on that energy. It was recorded in 81, but it's been singing for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years. If all of the women, if I owned a company and 55% of my workforce got up and walked out, I'd have to shut my company doors. For some reason, women don't seem to see that as power. I don't get it. I don't get it. You would rather vote for Trump than vote for a woman into power. What about Oprah Winfrey? What about Michelle Obama? I think they'd make wonderful, wonderful women presidents. I don't know if you could do it, though. Is there any unity amongst women anymore? That's an honest-to-goodness question, because I don't see it too much amongst the men. But at least we got the good old boys club, right? I got 2 daughters. And these are the things that I talk to my daughters about. Well, age appropriate, but still. My daughter's 13 this year. She's had her moon time since she was about almost 10, 9 and a bit. So, when I'm talking about these things and saying these things, all I'm doing is agreeing with what women have already said. I'm not saying anything new under the sun. I don't understand. Divide and conquer. But the thing is, for sacred females, you can become angry, yes. But the minute you become aggressive and vindictive and vengeful, you lose all of your sacred feminine energy because you de facto become a male in spirit. Go ahead and get angry, but say something intelligent for a change. Not catty, not gossipy, not looking down your nose at everybody in the world and thinking you're all right. Even my own family does this. And I just don't understand how they don't see the oppression that has been inflicted upon everyone, not just the Indian nations, but everybody everywhere. It's time for this to stop. If you don't stand up on behalf of women, who will? I'm standing up on behalf of my daughters until they're old enough to stand on their own. That's what a father is. Where's the father inside of you? He couldn't always have been bad. Does that mean religion? No. The divine masculine in you. If the divine masculine inside the female is a tyrant and a despot, then you are a bitch, and you treat the world as your gossip lair. If the divine masculine in you is angry, good. Write a book. Get online. You know what? Screw it all. Make a political movement and take over the country. It's called gynarchy. Government by the women. That's it. That's the basis of our matrilineal system. The government was run by the women, even though politics was run by the men. I said government. Why? Because without family clan beads, the chiefs have nowhere to sit. This is how it is. This is power. So you can think whatever you want to think, but why does a man have to say any of these things when women know this already? I'm just trying to educate my daughters to show that men do stand up for women. It's gone.